Candidates vying for a strong finish on Monday. The make-or-break caucus is now 5 days away. Trump is on tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern. I'm Bill Hemmer in New York. Hello. We got a big 2 hours beginning right now.
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino. This is America's Newsroom. I've enjoyed the town halls.
Yes.
I feel like the audience is great. The moderators are very good. And the candidates themselves have high energy and lots of interest in this. So Governor DeSantis discounted polls that show him losing to former President Trump. He also cautioned against nominating Trump for a third time, saying he thinks the president has too much baggage.
If Donald Trump is the nominee, the election is going to be about legal issues. It'll be a referendum on a lot of these issues that are not going to put us in a position to hold Biden accountable. Either way, it lets the Democrats off the hook. I think this election needs to be a referendum on their failed policies, and we need to offer a positive vision to turn this country around.
Josh Holmes is on deck with analysis, but let's begin with Bill Melugin in Des Moines. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Dana, good morning to you. 18 degrees out here in Des Moines right now, but this is toasty compared to what they're expecting on caucus night when those temps are expected to dip into the negatives. Donald Trump getting his own Fox News town hall tonight. That's where he's expected to make a pitch to his supporters. Do not get complacent with that big lead we have in the polling. Do not take this for granted. Get out there and caucus for me on the night of the 15th. Now, take a look at this video from last night. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis having his own Fox News town hall where he portrayed himself as the only conservative in this race who has repeatedly beaten the liberal left, as he says. He also says he's the only one in the race who has delivered on all the promises he made in the state of Florida. He went after Donald Trump and said he failed to deliver on his promises from 2016, including those about the southern border. Take a listen.
I am going to build the wall. Now, he said build the wall to Mexico, pay for it. He's actually been in Iowa and has reflected on that promise, and he said there was no way he could have Mexico pay for it. You know, Donald Trump promised record deportations. He actually deported less than Barack Obama did in his first 4 years.
As for former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, she has moved to number 2 in the Fox News power rankings as she's seeing a nice surge in polling in the state of New Hampshire. There had been prior speculation that she could potentially be Donald Trump's vice president if he were to be the nominee. So I caught up with her yesterday and I asked her directly, is she open to being Trump's VP, or would she like to slam the door shut on that right here, right now? Take a listen.
I don't play for second, but I've also said I am in no way interested in a vice president seat. But I'm happy in 6 months to tell you who my vice presidential candidate is going to be.
Just for clarity, just to get it one final time, can you shut the door on not being Trump's VP ever in the future? The
reason that I don't answer that is because who wants me to answer it? Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie want me to answer it. I don't play their game.
So not a straight answer right there. But as for Vivek Ramaswamy, look, he's been struggling in the polls, but he has been barnstorming this state. He has stayed determined. He's had more events here in Iowa than any of the other candidates. Yesterday, he had one of his events essentially get snowed out. He couldn't get to it. He had to cancel it. So he called into it and FaceTimed into his town hall and took questions from voters. So he's showing effort to try to connect with these Iowa voters. And he says come Monday night, the polling isn't going to matter. He thinks his ground game is going to show up for him. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Bill Melugin, looking forward to seeing you this weekend. Thank you.
So, Dana, on the billboard today, got an interesting one for you to look at and consider. If the polling is right and Donald Trump has this massive lead, is the story on Monday night, is it about second place? And if it is, what to think about that right now? So back in mid-December, the folks at Fox Business said, who is your second choice for the Republican nominee? We found DeSantis at 25%, Ramaswamy at 20%, and Nikki Haley at 15%. Then we went back to September, right? So this is 4 months ago. Also with our folks here at Fox Business, who would you never support for the nominee? Back in September, Christie's well over 50%. Pence, who's not even in the race anymore, at 42%, then Ramaswamy at 26%, and Donald Trump at 23%. What does this all mean? Basically, if you go back in history and look at the Iowa caucus, a lot of the polling before doesn't really turn out that way. And what happens when you do pull a surprise? Well, this is what we found in the last 2 really big contests out in Iowa. Ted Cruz before Iowa was at 20%. Well, he won, right? First place finish, beat Donald Trump by 3.5 points at 28%. That's not conclusive, right? Just gives you a little bit of a morsel to think about. Go back 4 years prior, all right? Here's Rick Santorum in 2012. Before Iowa, he was at 3%. But he won the Iowa caucus, got out all that momentum. Going into New Hampshire, headed for Nevada and South Carolina, he was 30% after New Hampshire, so it can make a difference. Josh Holmes, former Mitch McConnell chief of staff with me. And Josh, good morning to you. I guess you could say that second place isn't always necessarily defined as second place, Josh.
No, I think that's right, Bill. But you have to remember, Iowa has typically either been a springboard or a quicksand for candidates that are coming in and going out. Generally speaking, the number of candidates that compete in the Iowa caucus don't make it all the way to New Hampshire and beyond because of that winnowing process. So much of this campaign, in particular, because of Donald Trump's commanding lead and the fact that Iowa has not been particularly suspenseful in terms of who's ultimately going to win it, is about winnowing that field with the eye towards both New Hampshire and South Carolina, but ultimately before Super Tuesday, because we've got a former president whose ubiquitous name ID, everybody has a feeling about Donald Trump one way or another, and ultimately his ceiling, his vote ceiling, has been below 50% of the Republican primary electorate. That being said, his floor is very high. And so if this is ever going to be a competitive race, this winnowing process that we see through Iowa, New Hampshire, ultimately South Carolina and beyond, is imperative to have a basic mano-a-mano race with somebody. Whether that's Ron DeSantis, whether that's Nikki Haley, I guess we're going to find out, probably start finding out in less than a week.
They're competing against each other, but they're also regularly talking about the current commander-in-chief. Listen to Ron DeSantis last night. This is call for number 4.
I can tell you, I would love to run against Biden. I'm not going to let him hang out in his basement. We would run him ragged around this country. I would love to be able to be in a debate with Biden and be able to hold him accountable for his policies. Look, I just think there's clearly people in the Democratic Party who look and say, you know what, this guy is a few fries short of a Happy Meal. That's just the reality.
Josh, one thing that's pretty different, and you saw this political realignment starting kind of from 2012 to 2016 in particular, with college-educated voters versus non-college, and you have different demographics now that the Republican Party is going after, and that's true in Iowa, New Hampshire, all across the country, really. So how does that play into how you look at Iowa this year compared to previous years?
Well, you're right, Dana, in that the Republican Party over the last 5 or 6 years has been a little lean on suburban voters. Frankly, historically has had a huge strength with that particular community, but also picked up a ton of rural and ex-urban voters, many of which were former sort of blue dog Democrats. And so that coalition has changed a little bit. The difference is I think you're seeing Joe Biden has a very, very lean set of numbers, particularly on approval of the economy and the kind of things that suburban voters ultimately make a general election choice over. So I think those voters are ultimately open for business in the context of a general election. The question is whether or not many of them participate in a Republican primary or not. That will start to become very real here in Iowa. You'll see a ton of that in New Hampshire, and it could be a precursor for what you might see in a general election about, again, perhaps another realignment based on what the problems are facing the country.
Good stuff, Josh. Thanks for coming back. And
Thank
then
you.
again, all this could be over in 2 weeks, but that's why they play the games. Nice to see you. Thank you. More on all this, top of the next hour. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, former presidential candidate, will join us, and we will talk to him coming up.
It'd be great to see him again, indeed. The Pentagon finally pulling back the curtain on Secretary Lloyd Austin's hospitalization, revealing his prostate cancer diagnosis. The timing of the disclosure, that's invoking fears of a larger issue.
How can anybody be certain that the administration would not go to the same lengths to keep secret problems with President Biden's health in the future?
That's not what happened here, Peter.
Live at the White House, Jackie Heinrich, she's got the latest. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Dana. One of the most stunning revelations about all this is that President Biden found out about his defense secretary's cancer diagnosis the same day the rest of the public found out, meaning that when Biden spoke with Lloyd Austin on Saturday, Austin failed to mention that not so little detail, despite pledging that very same day in a statement, quote, "I recognize I could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed, and I commit to doing better." This has forced some uncomfortable exchanges for top officials who yesterday were also trying to emphasize the president's continued confidence in his cabinet member.
He was informed today. Nobody at the White House knew that Secretary Austin had prostate cancer until this morning, and the president was informed immediately after we were.
Yesterday, White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients ordered all cabinets to submit to the White House a list of their existing protocols to delegate decision-making authority, notification procedures for it, and documentation that it's in effect. Secretary Austin's Chief of Staff now under a microscope after apparently not delegating her duties to inform Congress, the White House, National Security Advisor, and the Deputy Defense Secretary of Austin's hospitalization for 2 days after she found out, citing the flu. She's since ordered an investigation into what happened, which sources have privately described as an effort to deflect blame.
And not only do you have to tell the president and people up and down the chain, but there's a specific statute that says you have to tell the Congress, the Republican and Democratic leaders of both houses. So I'm concerned about this, and the statute is not a suggestion.
Austin is still in the hospital, although he is recovering following his prostatectomy late last month. We learned that while he was under general anesthesia for that operation on December 22nd, the Deputy Defense Secretary was transferred certain duties, but apparently not the full array. And she also had no idea why it was happening at the time, Dana.
I mean, who's on first? All right, Jackie, thank you so much. Coming up, Congressman Mike Waltz and Dr. Mark Siegel will examine the impact of Austin's hidden diagnosis.
A school is not a shelter. It's not a migrant shelter. It's not a homeless shelter. And under any circumstances, we cannot have a situation where migrants are housed here, even for one night.
Well, this is quite a story now. New York City high school students kicked out of their classroom. They will be on Zoom today.
Ridiculous.
In order to house thousands of migrants camped out 5 miles away, okay? The disruption it's causing and the fury is red hot. And we're going to take you there live coming up here. Dana?
Plus, we are awaiting a hearing that could lead to holding Hunter Biden in contempt of Congress. Why the president's son is still in hot water. In Georgia's election interference case against Donald Trump is facing an explosive accusation from one of the co-defendants in the lawsuit. Jonathan Seri is live in Atlanta with the new developments, and this is quite something, Jonathan.
Yeah, it is indeed, Dana. This one co-defendant is fighting his indictment by turning the tables on prosecutors and actually trying to get them disqualified from the case. Michael Roman, a former Trump campaign official, filed the motion this week, alleging that Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis became romantically involved with attorney Nathan Wade prior to appointing him special prosecutor in the case and authorizing payments of more than $650,000 to his law office over the past couple years. DA Willis, according to the motion, has failed to remain independent and impartial in her performance of her official duties because she specifically awarded lucrative contracts to her boyfriend from which she now benefits financially through personal trips, hotel rooms, and the like paid for by Wade. Legal experts disagree on whether the claims against Willis, if proven, would be serious enough to overturn racketeering indictments against Roman, the former president, and 17 co-defendants. Take a listen.
But if there is a substantial conflict found and Judge McAfee thinks that exists, it'll be removed from the Fulton County DA's office in its entirety and tried by another DA's office in the state of Georgia.
The motion also contains invoices from Special Prosecutor Wade billing the Fulton County DA's office for an unspecified 8-hour meeting with White House counsel in May of 2022 and another 8 hours billed as interview with D.C. White House in November of that year. The White House is yet to confirm such meetings took place. The Wall Street Journal reports that Willis has been subpoenaed to testify in Wade's divorce case. Now, neither prosecutor has commented publicly on the motion that was filed this week. The DA's office says it will respond through appropriate court filings. Dana?
Jonathan Seri, we're going to keep an eye on that one. Thank you.
Meanwhile, here in New York, there's students at a New York City high school getting the boot from their own classroom. They will be on Zoom working remotely to make room for nearly 2,000 migrants who are moving in after this storm had threatened their tent shelter nearby. Fox team coverage, Paul Morrow standing by with an explanation, but Nate Foy's got the reporting. He's live in Brooklyn near the school. Nate, what are they telling you?
Hey, Bill. So a bit calmer today, both just in the feeling here, but also the weather. It was really bad weather last night, and with the conditions improving, the migrants have been moved to a tent facility nearby. That happened at 4:30 this morning. But the impact on students here at this high school, James Madison High School in Brooklyn, will continue throughout the day with all sports practices canceled. And you mentioned they'll be learning remotely today. And this is after nearly 2,000 migrants that you see right here moved into the school last night. Again, I mentioned because of that bad weather that threatened their nearby tent facility, the school notified parents of the 3,600 students here. The city writing, quote, "The health and safety of migrants in our care is always a top priority, which is why we are currently overseeing the relocation of 1,900 guests from the Humanitarian Emergency Response and Relief Center at Floyd Bennett Field. That relocation is forcing students to learn at home once again, which of course was a proven disaster for learning as we saw during COVID." Florida Governor and presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis spoke about this last night.
I think it's disgraceful. The city government is commandeering the school to house illegal aliens.
So the migrants, Bill, are now back at Floyd Bennett Field, but many are wondering for how long. Of course, we are in the middle of winter here in New York City, and with harsh conditions expected in the coming months, many parents are concerned that this could possibly happen again here at this high school or at other high schools throughout New York City. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has consistently said the city is out of space and all options are on the table.
Wow.
We'll send it back to you.
Can't make it up. Nate Foy, thanks out there in Brooklyn. Thanks for that. Dana.
Our next guest used to be introduced as a former NYPD inspector, attorney, and founder of OpsDesk.org. Now he's also a Fox News contributor, and we welcome Paul Morrow to the Fox family. Well earned. Great to have you.
Great
and
to be here.
we look
Welcome,
forward to
Paul.
having you on over and over again on all the different topics.
So do I. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so you know this area very well. Here's a bulletin that was on call for number 1. This was a notice sent from the school basically saying, hey, everyone, classes tomorrow will be remote. And this nice little, look at that little sunshiny logo they have here. But the reason when they found out why is an outrage.
Yeah, so let me set the scene. Floyd Bennett's a very remote area of South Brooklyn, and it's wide open space that was an airstrip during World War II. It's marshy, there's no natural boundaries, etc. That's where they put the tent city, an enormous tent. One of the tents is just gigantic, and high winds are going to impact that. You get high winds at airport situations. So even after the rain, because the rain has subsided, it's all going to be one big mud puddle. Very, very harsh conditions. The locals told the city, if you do this, it's not going to work out. We know this terrain better than you do. They did it anyway. But here, I think, is the nuance. We all know that the mayor is feuding with the federal government, namely President Biden. He went down to see President Biden to try to get some help on this issue. While he's down there, the FBI hits the door of his campaign finance advisor, takes his electronics a couple of days later. They're not seeing eye to eye. Adams has piped down since then, but when he had the option to move these people, where did he put them? Federal land. Okay, Floyd Bennett is a federal facility. So the way I see this is it's a microcosm of the sort of debate going on, battle, if you will, internal to the Democratic Party relative to the migrant issue. Adams being on the more moderate side of this, or at least what he wants is to say, well, we're a sanctuary city, but it's okay because the federal government's paying. Biden doesn't want to hear that, and so those are the battle lines.
If you look at it on a map, it almost looks like a state park.
Right,
right there on the water.
That's right.
And the school's about 5 miles north of this location.
That's right.
There were a lot of folks who thought they'll still be here in the summertime, but apparently they have been moved back.
Yeah.
But that's not to suggest that we get another storm in here. They'll be back inside that school. And Musk tweets this. He says, this is what happens when you run out of hotel rooms. Soon cities will run out of schools to vacate. Then they will come for your homes. I don't know if he's right or not, but this puts a target on the issue of immigration. Not just at the border anymore, Paul, but all throughout America.
That's right. We're all at the border now, and we've heard that online. You hear that from some politicians, and it's accurate because now the southern states, who are just completely overwhelmed, have got it together enough to set up transportation facilities. We know that Adams is going to be suing the bus companies, or at least saying he is. Let's look at what's really going on here. We've imported about 12 million illegals who are low-skilled. Okay, now look, I have nothing against them. I would probably leave Venezuela as well if I could to come to America. It's no comparison. But we've done that at a time when America has offshored its low-skilled jobs. We don't have those factory jobs anymore. They all went out to Asia. They're in China. They're in Thailand. They're in Vietnam. At a time when we're getting automation, there's robots who are handling things in the Amazon warehouses. We don't need low-skilled labor the way we used to. And in an era of AI coming, quantum computing, etc., this kind of stuff is more and more a rarity. And at the same time, we don't need them. We're getting them. And that's why you see encampments, you see up and down 9th Avenue to hang around with nothing to do. And it's young men with nothing to do find themselves into trouble.
Well, Paul, it's great to see you. I would love to be a fly on the wall of the moms and dads when they found out that their kids were going to do Zoom school today, right? I would like to hear some of those accents.
Maybe you would.
Welcome to the Fox family as well.
Thank you very much. In a moment here, teen overdoses hitting an all-time high in the U.S. We'll hear from one of the many families torn apart by fentanyl.
He was out with his friends playing basketball. He was sore, so him and his friend decided to split a Percocet. And the Percocet ended up being 1% cocaine and 99% fentanyl. So
on 21 Houthi drones and missiles in the Red Sea. Still going now. This is the largest and most complex drone and missile attack we have seen yet from the Houthis. This morning, Secretary Blinken met with the head of the Palestinian Authority on a pathway to a Palestinian state. This coming after his talks with Netanyahu and his war cabinet yesterday. After Israel's military mission to exterminate Hamas, that continues in Gaza. So it's an ongoing story here, in the Middle East, and we will see in time how this works out. But that happened overnight. We're going to bring that to you at 9:32.
There's a new report today showing overdose deaths among American teens hit an all-time high in 2022. And that's not a record you want to break. Overdoses are now the third leading cause of death in kids, and researchers say fentanyl hidden in counterfeit pills is driving the surge. Brian Yennis has been digging into this. He's got more. Hi, Brian.
Dana, good morning. About 22 high school kids, that's enough to fill a classroom, died every week in 2022 from drug overdoses nationwide. That is a record high, according to a new study published in the New England Journal of Medicine today. More than 1,100 14 to 18-year-olds died of overdoses. At least 75% of the deaths were the result of fentanyl poisonings, mostly kids who inadvertently took counterfeit prescription pills. The death rate from drug overdoses has more than doubled in the last 5 years.
Fewer teens than ever are actively using drugs, and yet more teens than ever are dying. And that's because drug use isn't becoming more common, it's becoming more dangerous.
Researchers found Arizona, Colorado, and Washington had the highest overdose death rates. Maricopa County, Arizona, and Los Angeles County, California had the most fatal overdoses. CBP says they seized a record amount of fentanyl nationwide in 2023. 99% came from our southern border. 17-year-old Xavier Gerchow died from fentanyl poisoning in Denver, Colorado. His sister says Xavier was sore one day after playing basketball and his friend offered to split a Percocet. It was a fake containing 99% fentanyl. The friend survived. Xavier did not.
he was laying in bed with friends, and they thought that he fell asleep. And then the next morning when he didn't wake up, that was when they called 911. I wish that we had educated Xavier more, or ourselves to start, and educated his friends. If Narcan was in our home, this could be a very different reality.
One resource for parents and teens is going to the website songforcharlie.org. Dana?
Brian Yennis, thank you, and we feel for her. Indeed, thank you.
There were some shortfalls, and so it's important that we go back and look at what those shortfalls were, what could have been done better, and make sure that going forward we're improving those processes.
So we'll find out in the end what they say about this, but that's what we know for now. The Pentagon doing major course correction, finally releasing the details on Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's hospitalization. He had complications after prostate cancer surgery. But still, days later, there are more questions than answers, and Dr. Mark Siegel's got the health side of that. Doc, good morning to you. Is this typically an outpatient procedure? Could he be thinking, I'm just going to go in for a couple hours, I'll be home later tonight, it'll be over, and we'll close the door on this procedure? What, as a physician, would concern you about what you're hearing, doctor?
Well, I would not consider it an outpatient procedure. Using a small incision, you're using a robot, which is a miracle, but things can go wrong. 1 to 3% of the time, you end up with a serious infection, like he did. There was also fluid in his abdomen, which they drained out through external means. A radiologist probably put a catheter into that and drained it. It pressed on his bowel. He had to have the bowel decompressed. All of these were complications which caused him to go back into the hospital and into the ICU. I think, Bill, and again, I'm giving you my opinion here. I think this is a wake-up call for a lot of issues. Older men don't like talking about their prostate. They're concerned about their sexual function. I don't know that this is Secretary Austin, but this is a lot of my patients. Also, he should be using this as a teaching moment for black men who are 2.5 times more likely to get prostate cancer than white men, and they may not be going for the screening they need. He should have come out right away and talked about this and used it as a wake-up call. 1 out of 8 men get prostate cancer at some time in their life. Much more than that, black men, and over the age of 70, and he's 70, it doubles. Then it starts to triple. We need a wake-up call for this kind of screening.
Nguyên liệu cần chuẩn bị gồm có sợi màu be, sợi màu vàng, kim móc phù hợp với kích thước sợi, bông gòn để nhồi vào phía bên trong. Nếu các bạn yêu thích video, hãy nhớ nhấn vào nút đăng ký kênh, like, share video để ủng hộ mình ra nhiều video hơn nữa nha. Và sau đây, hãy cùng mình theo dõi phần hướng dẫn chi tiết. Sử dụng sợi màu be, móc 2 mũi xích. Quay lại, móc 6 mũi đơn vào chân đầu tiên. Hàng thứ hai, móc 1 mũi đơn, 1 mũi tăng, móc 3 lần như vậy. Hàng thứ tư, móc 2 mũi đơn, 1 mũi tăng, móc 3 lần như vậy. Hàng tiếp theo, móc 1 mũi đơn, 1 mũi tăng, móc 6 lần như vậy. Hàng tiếp theo, móc 1 mũi tăng, mũi đơn. Lặp lại như vậy cho đến hết hàng. Một mũi tăng, 2 mũi đơn, hàng 24 mũi đơn thứ nhất, mũi đơn thứ 5, mũi đơn thứ 10, mũi đơn thứ 15, mũi đơn thứ 20, hàng 24 mũi đơn thứ 2, mũi đơn thứ 6, mũi đơn thứ 12, mũi đơn thứ 18, hàng 24 mũi đơn thứ 3, mũi đơn thứ 7, mũi đơn thứ 14, mũi đơn thứ 21, hàng 24 mũi đơn thứ 4, mũi đơn thứ 8, mũi đơn thứ 16, hàng 24 mũi đơn thứ 5, mũi đơn thứ 5, Mũi đơn thứ 10. Mũi đơn thứ 15. Mũi đơn thứ 20. Hàng 24, mũi đơn thứ 6. Mũi đơn thứ 4. Mũi đơn thứ 8. Mũi đơn thứ 12. Mũi đơn thứ 16. Mũi đơn thứ 20. Đổi sang sợi màu vàng. Hàng tiếp theo, móc vào cạnh phía trong của chân mũi 24 mũi đơn bằng sợi màu vàng. Mũi đơn thứ 5. Mũi đơn thứ 10. Mũi đơn thứ 15. Mũi đơn thứ 20. Hàng 24 mũi đơn màu vàng thứ 2. Mũi đơn thứ 6. Mũi đơn thứ 12. Mũi đơn thứ 20. Hàng 24 mũi đơn màu vàng thứ 3. Mũi đơn thứ 7.